Welcome to 1.2 functions, and if you had to just generally say what are we studying first semester, it's going to be functions, just a whole myriad of different types of functions. So I guess we should know what a function is. And before we get to our little Keebler Elf friend here in the Keebler Elf Cookie Factory, let's talk about definition of a function, and let's see if we can get our heads around this. A function f from a set A to a set B is a relation, which begs the question, what is a relation? That assigns to each element x from set A exactly one element y that's in set B. The set A is the domain or the set of inputs of the function f, and the set B contains the range or the set of outputs. And I remember hearing this, and you've probably heard this definition before, and I'm going to guess I was probably 8th grade or freshman year when I was kind of advanced in this, and but you probably were talking about functions or f of x when you were back in freshman year or 7th, 8th grade. So anyway, I'm not much of an abstract thinker, and that doesn't really benefit math, but in some ways I think it's benefited me as a teacher because the majority of us are not abstract thinkers. If you're an abstract thinker and this makes sense to you, it would be a pretty good indication without really thinking about it or looking at it, then more power to you, but most of you are not. So here's the deal. When I was a young boy, not even young boy, I guess, even through high school and college, I was guilty of it too. We didn't have many channels. We had ABC, NBC, CBS, and there really was, other than the Flintstones, which was on a night during the week. There was no Simpsons then that comes on like in evenings. There was only like one cartoon that came on at night. The three main channels, ABC, NBC, CBS, they would play cartoons starting at about 6 or 7 o'clock in the morning on Saturday, and it would go till noon, and then we'd get wrestling after that. So that was a big day for me. You just didn't have opportunity to watch cartoons, and I was totally into cartoons at that age. And I remember back then that they're marketing to children, so any factory that creates cookies good. McDonald's good. I mean, there were advertisements like this all the time for years, and it was ingrained. And what's that have to do with functions? Well, the week I was learning about functions, maybe it was a Wednesday or something, it was introduced, and it really didn't make sense to me. And then I saw this commercial, and on this commercial, you had little Papa Elf was inside the factory with some other elves, and there's some elves that were just bringing wheelbarrows of like raw product, different things they were bringing in, and then they didn't show anything inside the factory, but then on the other side, out came fudge striped cookies. And I said, that is it. That is what a function is. A function is just a factory where we put raw material in, and based on what comes in, it determines what comes out of it. So we put in, say, X, and what comes out of it, algebraically speaking, is Y, or what we put in is flour and eggs and milk and cocoa, and what comes out is fudge-striped cookies. But anyway, so here's the way this makes sense to me. It definitely clicked when I saw this guy talking with some of the elves on a different commercial in there, and was like they all had their own little job. So let's say inside our tree, I've got elf A, B, C, D, and Papa Elf here, the owner of the tree, goes in and says, okay, and I'm just going to use numbers here for this, since it's mathematical, but it could be anything, as you'll see in our assignment. Elf A, we're going to get delivered some 1s today. You're going to be in charge of those. B, we're going to get some 2s. C, you're going to be in charge of any time a 3 comes here to the factory, you're in charge of it, and D, you're in charge of 4. A, I want you to take those into the factory and turn the 1s into 7s. B's, you got 2s, you're going to turn those into 1s. C's, you're going to turn 3s into 9s, and D, you're going to turn 4s into -3s, and that's your job. And so the question should be, is there any reason any one of those elves should be confused? And you might say, well, wait, D's making negative numbers, but D just needs to mind D's business. Hey, you get a 4, turn it into a -3. We got the tools to do it. So this is a function because each of our elves who are working with 1, 2, 3, 4 in set A is assigned one object that's coming out, exactly one object of the things we make. These are the different products we make. So this is a function. Tuesday comes, A, B, C, D, and we've got A, you're going to turn 1s into 4s, and B, you're going to turn 2s into 5s, and D, you're going to turn 3s into 12s today. And I just had a meeting with A, B, C, and D. Would any elf be confused? And yes, C is confused. C's out there, well, what's my job today? Elves like to work. You've probably seen the movie Elf, and they want to have a job. So C has no job. Let's see why that's not a function based on the definition. From set A to set B is a relation that assigns to each element X of the A, assigns to each elf, the 1, 2, 3, and 4 associate with those elves, assigns each of those to do something, to create something, to one element in Y. And C is not assigned, not a function. Okay, how about A, B, C, D? A, you're going to turn 9s into 2s. B, you're going to turn 4s. We're going to get delivered some 4s today. You're going to turn those into 2s. C, you're going to turn 3s into 7s. And D, you're going to turn 5s into 5s. Now, there is some elf confusion here. Well, you could argue there's a little bit of elf confusion here. 5, so let's talk about the case with D. Turning 5s into 5s. Is that confusing? It's like, man, the boss is being nice to me. I know I had a tough day yesterday. I'm not feeling real well. All I got to do is take these 5s, turn them into 5s. But there's no confusion there. You'll see confusion shortly. C, 3s into 7s. How about A and B? Would they be confused? A's going about A's job all day. Hey, a 9 came, takes it, turns into 2. B grabs a 4, turns it into a 2. And they're just going about their business. No confusion whatsoever. They all go to lunch. Hey, what are you guys doing? And D goes, hey, listen to this, guys. I just got to turn 5s into 5s. They're like, oh, man, you're lucky. I'm really working hard today, but I like it. C, I'm turning 3s into 7s. And B says, I'm turning 4s into 2s. And A says, hey, I'm turning 9s into 2s. But does that confuse them on what their job is for the day? Okay, here's what we've got. I could draw this way. We got 9s, 4s, 3s, 5s. We're making 2s and 7s and 5s. 9s get turned into these. 4s get turned into these. 3s get turned into those. 5 get turned into those. There is no elf confusion. This is a function. It's kind of a mind your own business. Just do your job, B. What are you supposed to do? If the head boss comes to you, say, what's your job? Hey, I'm turning 4s into 2s. Not, hey, what's your job? I'm turning 9s into 2s. They're not confused. How about this? I'm just assigning jobs. A, B, C, D. My faithful elves are here to work. And I say, A, you're going to turn 6s into -1s. B, you're going to turn 4s into 5s. C, you're going to turn 7s into 2s. B, you're going to turn 8s, or excuse me, B, you're going to turn 4s into 5. Let's do this. D, you're going to turn 4s into 6s. Sorry about that. Just kind of shooting from the cuff here. Well, if I look at that as a model, we're going to receive 4s, we're going to receive 6s, we're going to receive 7s, we're going to make -1s and 5s and 2s and 6s. And 6s are turned into -1s. 4s get turned into 5s, no confusion there. 7s get turned into 2s, so far so good. But 4s are turned into 6s and into 5s. And these guys would be confused. A 4 comes and B says, oh, I got to pick up this 4. And D's like, wait a minute, I'm supposed to pick up 4s. Well, what are you doing with them? Well, I'm making 6s. Wait, the boss said turn 4s into 5s, not 4s into 6s. And D says the opposite. So this is not a function. And here's one more sneaky example of not a function. A, B, C, D. Turn 1s into 2s, turn 3s into 8s, D turns 6s into 4s, and C would be confused. And let's read it. From set A to set B is a relation that assigns to each element X, and else C did not get an assignment. So not a function. Okay, characteristics of a function. Each element of A must be matched with an element of B. Well, that's in this description up here. It's just a little bit more clear here. Some elements of B might not be matched to any elements of A. Like some days, hey, maybe today we're just not making 10s. We make 10s some of the time, but maybe today we're not making 10s. Oh, I guess I already had that example up here. Well, we got that one covered. Two or more elements of A may be matched with the same element of B. Or two or more elements of A may be matched with the same element of B. And that happened right here. 9s into 2s, 4s into 2s, still a function. Okay? And an element of A cannot be matched with two different elements of B, and that is pure ELF confusion right there. Okay. And finally, some terminology, some things that are going on with our factory. Algebraically speaking, into our little factory, we typically put in X values and we get out Y values. So we're a factory that turns X's into Y's, and we can do that a lot of different ways. The X is called the independent. We can choose to put in whatever we want, but what we go in determines what comes out. So the Y is the dependent variable, and the X set of X's are the domain, and the Y's, what the values that come out of our cookie factory, are the ranges. Okay, are the values that are in the range. Okay, so there's some more discussion that's going to come with our assignment, and I'm going to splice a video together because I've got some issues here with my projector, or with my screen capture, and so I'll have a spliced one, and I'll be right back with you. Well, hopefully this is just a welcome back for me. My intention is to have this spliced on to the previous video, so if you don't understand what I'm saying, that's okay. I'm kind of just talking to myself. This is 1.2, page 2. We're going to get into this, and it's going to be a quick one. But before, I want to reiterate something I talked back in 1.1. When I collect these, I'm going to expect anything, even on the notes pages that I have, to be copied down. That way I feel like I will have you watch the notes. I've had a number of college students have gotten back with me how they've talked to other calculus students and explained to them what a function is in terms of Keebler elves and cookie factories, and that I mean, this is probably seven students have reiterated this story to me, that kids would say, hey, for the first time I really feel like I understand functions now. So anyway, anything I write on here, I'm expecting you to have, so let's talk ELF confusion on these right here. Does the relation, and a relation is just a set of ordered pairs. So for instance, number 8, -2, 3 is an ordered pair, -1, 3 is an ordered pair, -1, 4 is an ordered pair, 0, 4 is an ordered pair, and 1, 5 is an ordered pair. That is a relation. Is it a function? And here's where I think elves. The elf in charge of -2s knows what to do with them. The elf in charge of 0s is going to turn them into 4s, and 1 is going to turn them into 5s. But the elf in charge of -1 has been told, turn those -1s into 3s. That's your job today. Hey, turn those -1s into 4s. That's your job today. And that's one elf not knowing what to do with -1. So this is not a function. Explain your reasoning. -1 is assigned to two different elements in the range. And I might just refer to that, just in case I'm going to refer to it again, I might refer to that as star. Okay, then I take a look at number 10, and we see Alabama is assigned to 9. Hey, you get Alabama turned into 9. Is there anything confusing about this elf in charge of Alabama? Nope. Alaska. Elf in charge of Alaska. When Alaska is delivered here, you make it 3. Colorado, turn it into 9. Is that confusing because Alabama's getting turned into 9s? Nope. You're an elf in charge of Colorado, turn them into 9s. That's one element of the domain getting assigned to one element of the range. One element of the domain assigned to 2 different elements in the range is confusing. Delaware, just like Alaska, you're going to turn Delaware into 3s, but there's nothing confusing. Mind your own business. If you get a Delaware, you know you're making a 3, and if you get a Nebraska, you know you're making a 5, and all 5 elves have a job. So this is a function, and the reason is all elements in the domain are assigned to one element in the range. And that's what a function is. No elf confusion. Let's call that house, in case I want to use that again. I'm fine with using star or house over here if you want. Okay, doesn't mean there might not be some other explanations we have to use, like for instance, if 1 didn't have a job, let's say 1 wasn't assigned to 5, this would not be a function because one of the elements in the domain is not assigned to the range, but at least we have these ones mapped out. Okay, number 12. This is just elves. Elf in charge of 0s, turn them into -4s. Elf in charge of 1s, turn them into -2s. Elf in charge of 2s, turn them into 0s. Elf in charge of 1, turn them into 2s. 0s into 4s. What are we going to do at this factory when a 0 is delivered? It's confusing. What are we going to do when a 1 is delivered? Therefore, if I wrote this one out, we'd have 0s where this is what's getting delivered, but 0s are getting turned into 4s, 0s are getting turned into -4s, 1s are getting turned into 2s, 1s are getting turned into -2s, and only the elf in charge of 2s would not be confused. So this is not a function because of star up here. We've got a number is assigned to 2 different elements in the range, so this is not a function. Here, I'm going to just list these ordered pairs out. Here's 0s get turned into -1s, x's get turned into y's, 1s get turned into 0s, elf in charge of 2s, turn them into 1s, elf in charge of 3s, turn them into 2s, elf in charge of 4, turn them into 3s. Any confusion there? Each of these elves, we'll call it elf 0, elf 1, elf 2, elf 3, elf 4, have a very distinct job. The important thing is they have a job, and there's no confusion to it. So this is a function, and that is because all elements in the domain are assigned to one element in the range. All right. And 16, a little different here for this. First, there's 3 parts to it. Here's the deal. I have to make sure if this is going to be a function from A to B, this is the domain. I need a job for A, B, and C. And the elements from A, B, and C have to be turned into 0s, 1s, 2s, and 3s. Now, A has a job, C has jobs, B has a job. Is any of the elves confused? A, C, or B? Well, yeah, C's been told that you're to turn C's into 2's and C's into 3's. Confusion, therefore it is not a function for the same reason this one was not a function, star. A little bit lazy, but I think some of you might appreciate that. A's get turned into 1's, B's get turned into 2's, C's get turned into 3's. Is it a problem that we're not making zeros? Well, the elves are in charge of A, B, and C. I got 3 elves, and each of those elves has a job making one of the things that we make. This is a function because all elements in the domain are assigned to one element in the range. A's got a job, makes one of these, B makes one of these, C makes one of these. No elf confusion. Now, if we were just looking at this, 1's get turned into A's, 0's get turned into A's, oh, that's just coincidental, but zeros, we know what to do with zeros, we know what to do with 1's, we know what to do with 2's, we know what to do with 3's. So the very tempting to say this is a function, and you would be right, it is a function, but it is not a function from A to B. It's actually a function from B back to A. So that one's sneaky. It's not a function because it is from A to B because 1, 0, 2, and 3 are not in A, and you could say the others are not in B. So that one's really kind of sneaky because just looking at this, it looks like a function, and it is, but it's not a function from A to B. All right, let me know what I can help you with.